The great hall of the Viralan Empire was carved from black stone that shimmered like frozen starlight. Tall columns rose into shadows, and banners of silver and crimson hung from the vaulted ceiling. The air was thick with the scent of burning oils, and the sound of alien war drums echoed through the chamber. At the far end, on a throne made of molten metal and bone, sat Queen Zithra, tall, beautiful, and dangerous. Her skin glimmered like polished obsidian, and her golden eyes held the cold fire of someone who had crushed empires. She ruled over hundreds of worlds, commanded fleets larger than any human nation had ever seen, and feared no one. Today she had summoned a prisoner to her court. Two massive guards dragged the man forward, his wrists bound with glowing restraints. He was smaller than the aliens around him, his frame lean rather than massive, his dark hair matted from days in the dungeon. His name was Elias Cross, and he was the only human within 1,000 light years. The queen leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. "So this is the creature who dares speak of resisting me?" Elias met her gaze without flinching. "I'm not here to resist you," he said. "I'm here to end you." The court erupted in laughter. Hundreds of alien nobles jeered and hissed, their jeweled armor flashing in the torchlight. Even the guards holding Elias sneered down at him. But the loudest laugh came from the queen, herself. It was rich, mocking, and filled with absolute certainty that nothing he could do would ever threaten her. "You think a fragile human can take my throne?" she asked. "I have fought warlords who could crush your bones with a single blow." Elias's voice was calm. "And yet, none of them are standing here." The queen's smile faded slightly, but she waved a hand. "No matter. Tomorrow, you will die in the arena. My people will enjoy watching you break." The guards dragged him away, but his eyes never left hers. That stare lingered in her mind, long after he was gone. The dungeon was cold, damp, and silent, except for the drip of water from the ceiling. Elias sat against the wall, his hands free now. The restraints had been more for show than necessity. In the shadows across from him, an old alien prisoner shifted and spoke. "You should not have looked her in the eye," the old voice rasped. "She will see it as a challenge." "It is," Elias said simply. The old prisoner laughed bitterly. "Then you are already dead." Elias leaned forward. "Tell me something. What does she fear?" There was a pause, then a whisper. "She fears only one thing, that someone will win in the arena not by strength, but by making the crowd turn against her." Elias filed that away. He knew then what he had to do. The next day, the arena roared with life. Tens of thousands of Virelans filled the stands, their voices blending into a thunderous wall of sound. The sand floor shimmered under the heat of twin suns overhead. Elias stood alone at the center, unarmed. Across from him the gates opened, and a beast the size of a starship engine lumbered out. Its skin was plated in natural armor, its mouth lined with teeth like curved knives. The crowd screamed for blood. The queen sat high above, leaning back, in her throne, certain of what was about to happen. But Elias didn't charge the beast. He didn't even raise his fists. He moved sideways, circling slowly, making the creature follow him. It bellowed in frustration, charging again and again, but he slipped out of reach each time. He made it look clumsy, foolish, turning the deadly fight into a dance. The crowd began to murmur. Some even laughed, not at him, but at the beast. Elias caught the queen's eye and smirked. She shifted in her seat. The fight dragged on, and the murmurs grew louder. Every time the beast missed, the laughter spread. When Elias finally struck, sliding under its charge and driving a shard of broken armor into its unprotected throat, the crowd erupted not in the queen's victory cry, but in chants for the human. From her throne, Queen Zithra's smile was gone. Her golden eyes burned with something new, not amusement, not scorn, recognition. She realized too late that this was not the end of the human story. It was the beginning. The roar of the crowd still echoed in Elias's ears long after the arena gates closed behind him. The guards led him through the torch-lit tunnels with unusual silence. Even they seemed unsettled. they had expected to drag his corpse back to the Queen. Instead, they were escorting him alive, victorious, and with the crowd chanting his name. When they reached the holding chambers, one of the guards leaned close enough to mutter, "Do not think their cheers will save you. The Queen will not tolerate a human stealing her glory." Elias only smiled faintly. "I'm counting on that." In the throne room that evening, Queen Zythera held court as she always did, surrounded by towering warriors, robed advisors, and a sea of nobles who bowed at her every word. Yet her expression was tighter than usual, her golden eyes fixed on the entrance where Elias was brought in. He walked without chains this time. That was unusual. The crowd outside the palace was still, talking about his match, and perhaps the Queen wanted to show she feared nothing. "Human," she began, her voice carrying over the hall. "You survived the arena. You made the crowd laugh. That is a rare skill." Elias bowed slightly, but his eyes never left hers. "Perhaps I should thank you for the opportunity." The Queen's lips curved, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Opportunities are dangerous things. They can lead to ambition or change," Elias replied. A murmur ran through the hall. The Queen tilted her head, studying him. "Do you believe you can change my empire?" "I believe your people are already imagining it," he said, letting the words hang in the air like a challenge. The Queen rose slowly from her throne, her shadow stretching across the marble floor. "Tomorrow, you will face another challenge, one that will not amuse them." Back in the dungeon, Elias found the old prisoner waiting in the shadows. "You have her attention now," the old alien said quietly. "That is not a gift. It is a knife pointed at your throat." Elias sat across from him. "The people like a story. Yesterday I was a joke. Today I'm something else. If I can make them see me as the one who can stand where no one else dares." The old alien shook his head. "Careful. The Queen rules through fear, not love. If you turn her people toward you, she will be forced to destroy you, publicly. Then I'll have to make it so destroying me destroys her too," Elias said. The next morning, the arena gates opened again. The crowd was already chanting, but this time there was no beast. Instead, 6 alien warriors stepped out, champions of the Queen's elite guard, each armed with curved blades that shimmered in the sunlight. The announcer's voice boomed. "By decree of Queen Zythera, today's contest will be a trial of skill. The human will face her chosen in single combat until he is defeated, or until no challengers remain." The crowd roared with excitement. The first warrior stepped forward, moving with the confidence of someone certain he would win. Elias didn't wait for him to attack. He closed the distance in a flash, using speed rather than strength. He struck, low hooked the alien's leg, and sent him crashing into the sand. The match ended in seconds. The crowd erupted in laughter and cheers. The second came harder, faster. Elias let him swing wide, ducked under the blade, and slammed the hilt of his own stolen sword into the warrior's chest, knocking the air out of him. Another roar from the stands. By the fourth match, the crowd was chanting in rhythm. By the fifth, they were shouting his name between every blow. And when the sixth and final challenger fell with a grunt into the sand, the entire arena was on its feet. Up in her throne, Queen Zythera's jaw tightened. Her plan had been to humble him. Instead, he had turned her own champions into stepping stones. The way the crowd looked at him now, she recognized that look. It was the look of a people who had found someone unafraid. She stood abruptly, silencing the arena. "Enough," she declared. "The human has proven his skill. Tomorrow, he will be given an honor and a test unlike any before it." Elias glanced up at her and bowed, but in his eyes was a spark she could not miss. It wasn't just defiance, it was intent. That night, in the dark of his cell, Elias whispered to the old prisoner, "She's not going to kill me tomorrow. She's going to try to own me." "And will you let her?" the old alien asked. Elias's lips curled into a smile. "No. I'm going to make her people believe I already own the throne." The palace of Queen Zythera was a fortress draped in luxury. Towering walls of black crystal guarded halls lined with silk banners and statues of ancient warlords. Servants moved like shadows, silent and watchful. Every corner smelled faintly of burning incense, a reminder that the queen ruled both with beauty and with fear. Elias walked between two guards down a corridor of polished stone that reflected torchlight like a mirror. His hands were free, his wounds healed. Today, he was not in chains. Today, he was a guest. They brought him to a grand chamber with high arched windows that looked out over the capital. The city stretched for miles. Spires of alien steel, streets lit with glowing veins of energy, and far beyond, the glitter of the fleet at anchor. The queen sat at a long table, surrounded by advisors and nobles. Her golden eyes followed him. As he approached, her posture relaxed but alert. "Human," she said with a faint smile, "you have amused me twice in the arena. Few can say that. Today you dine in my court." Elias inclined his head but didn't bow. "I hope the food is as good as your hospitality." A murmur ran through the table, half amusement, half shock. The queen's smile didn't fade. "Boldness suits you, for now." The meal was a display of wealth and power. Platters of shimmering alien fruits, meat carved from beasts hunted on distant worlds, wine that glowed faintly in the dark. Servants poured drinks, refilled plates, and cleared dishes with perfect precision. The nobles asked Elias questions, some genuine, others mocking. Where did he learn to fight? How could a human survive among them? Did his people truly live on a single world, bound to a single sun? Elias answered with a calm confidence that made some laugh and others frown. He noticed every reaction, every glance shared between the queen's advisors. These were cracks, small but real. At one point, an older noble leaned toward the queen. "Majesty, the people are speaking of him. They call him the crowd's champion." The queen's eyes flicked to Elias. "Let them speak. Words do not change who wears the crown." Elias met her gaze. "No, but they can change who the crown fits." The table fell silent. After the meal, the queen rose and motioned for him to follow. They walked alone through a garden of alien flowers that glowed softly in the twilight. The air was warm and still, and far below, the city lights shimmered like a living sea. She stopped at the edge of a balcony. "Do you know why I have kept you alive?" she asked. "You think you can use me," Elias replied. Her lips curved. "Not use, shape, the people like you. If I claim you as my champion, their loyalty to you becomes loyalty to me. And if I refuse?" Her golden eyes hardened. "Then the next time you face the arena, it will not be for sport." For a moment, they simply stared at each other. She was taller, stronger, and backed by the power of an empire. But Elias didn't look away. "If you claim me," he said slowly, "it will be the first step in losing everything." The queen's expression didn't change, but he saw it, the flicker of something behind her eyes. Not fear exactly, but awareness. She knew he wasn't bluffing. That night, Elias was given a chamber in the guest wing. It was large and richly furnished with a bed covered in silken sheets, a desk of dark wood, and a window that overlooked the city. Guards stood outside, but they weren't there to protect him. They were there to watch him. In the shadows near the desk, a figure moved. The old prisoner from the dungeon stepped into the light wearing servant's robes. "You," Elias said in surprise. "I have friends here," the old alien said. "You are closer to her now. But be careful. Her court is a nest of knives. Many want her throne, but none dare touch it. If they believe you can." Elias's mind was already turning. "Then I'll give them a reason to believe." The next day, court was held again. This time, Elias wasn't seated at the edge as a curiosity. He was placed beside the queen. The message was clear. She was claiming him as her own. But Elias didn't act like a loyal champion. He spoke to the nobles as if he were one of them, asked about their worlds, their fleets, their grievances. He laughed with them, listened to their complaints, And subtly, always subtly, he let them imagine a ruler who wasn't Queen Zythra, and he saw it in their eyes just for a moment, the thought they'd never dared to speak. Maybe. The marketplace of Virelin Prime was alive with sound. Merchants called out their wares, the smell of spiced meats drifted through the air, and street performers danced on wide stone steps. But that day, the usual songs had changed. In the crowd's laughter, a name was whispered again and again. Elias, the human, crowd's champion. From the balcony of her palace, Queen Zythera watched. The voices carried up even to her high throne, and each one felt like a thorn in her pride. The human was supposed to be her tool, an amusing symbol of her magnanimity. But the way the people spoke of him now, it was not as her champion. It was as their own. She turned sharply to her advisor, Varek, a tall warrior with eyes like cold steel. Why are they speaking his name in the streets? Varek hesitated. Majesty, he visits the markets often. He speaks to the traders, eats at their stalls, listens to their grievances. He remembers their names. The queen's jaw tightened. And they like him, Varek admitted. Perhaps too much. That afternoon, Elias moved through the marketplace in plain clothes without the queen's guards. He was careful not to draw attention at first, but it was impossible to avoid the stares. Children ran to him, shouting his name. Merchants offered him food without payment. Even hardened soldiers nodded in respect. An old woman clasped his hand. You're not afraid to look her in the eye. None of us have done that in years. Elias smiled faintly. Someone has to. Her grip tightened. Then someone has to keep you alive. He knew it wasn't just admiration, it was hope. And hope was more dangerous to the queen than any army. Inside the palace, whispers were spreading too. In the great hall, nobles spoke in hushed tones, watching the queen carefully. At council meetings, some even asked for Elias's opinion before hers. The first time it happened, Zythera's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. The second time, she interrupted with a pointed reminder. It is I who rules this empire. Elias didn't challenge her outright. Instead, he leaned back in his seat, smiling as if her words had proven nothing. The nobles noticed. The more she tried to assert her dominance, the more it looked like she was defending it. One night, Varek came to Elias's chambers. The guards outside didn't stop him. He closed the door and spoke quietly. The queen thinks she can control you. She is wrong. But if you make her fear losing her crown too quickly, she will destroy you before you have the power to stop her. Elias studied him. Why tell me this? Varek's expression was unreadable. Because the empire needs a ruler the people trust, and because I would rather be at the side of the one who will win. Elias didn't answer immediately, but when he did, it was with a calm certainty. Then, help me make them see it. The next day, a parade was held in the capital, a display of the queen's might, meant to remind her people of her power. War banners streamed from tall masts, soldiers in gleaming armor marched in perfect formation, and captured enemies were paraded through the streets as trophies. But when Elias rode beside the queen, the cheers weren't for her. Everywhere they went, the crowd shouted his name. Some even reached out past the guards to touch him. Zythera's golden eyes burned as she looked at him. They forget themselves, she murmured under her breath. Elias met her gaze, his voice, just loud enough for her to hear. Or maybe they're remembering what it's like to believe in someone. Her grip tightened on the armrest of her throne carriage, but she said nothing. That evening, in her private chambers, the queen paced before the great window that overlooked the city. He undermines me in my own court, she said to Varek. The people chant his name. The nobles watch him more than me. Varek's voice was calm. Majesty, remove him and you risk turning him into a martyr. The crowd's love will only grow. Zythera turned sharply. Then what do you suggest? Bring him closer, Varek said. Closer than anyone. Let the people think you favor him. Then, when the moment is right, crush him where all can. See? The queen considered this, her lips curling into a cold smile. Yes, let him believe he rises by my will, and when I end him the people will learn their place. But in the shadows outside her chamber, a servant who had overheard everything slipped away quietly, heading straight for Elias's quarters. When Elias heard the warning, he didn't panic. He simply nodded. Then we make her think she's winning. The next cycle, Queen Zithara announced a grand festival to honor the loyalty and unity of the Virilan Empire. It was the perfect stage for her new strategy. Elias would stand beside her in every ceremony, every speech, every public display. The people would see him as hers, and by extension, his growing fame would only feed her image, or so she thought. The capital streets were overflowing with people. Flags and banners of crimson and silver lined every building. The air smelled of roasted meats and sweet nectar, and the sound of music carried through the crowded avenues. From the balcony of the high palace, Zithara stepped forward in full ceremonial armor, black plates traced with golden veins, a crimson cape flowing in the wind. Elias stood to her right, dressed in simpler garb but wearing a Virellan crest pinned to his chest. The crowd erupted the moment they saw them. But the shouts were not, "Long live the Queen." They were his name. Elias. 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 Zithara's golden eyes narrowed for the briefest moment before she raised a hand for silence. Her voice rang out across the plaza. People of Virilan, today we celebrate the strength of our empire. Today we honor the unity between our worlds, our fleets, and even those who have come from distant stars to serve under our banner. She turned toward Elias, gesturing for him to step forward. This human stands as proof that the Queen's grace knows no limits. Under my guidance, he has become a symbol of our greatness. The words were meant to bind him to her. But when Elias looked out over the crowd, he didn't speak of her. He spoke to them. I came here as a prisoner, he began, his voice steady. I fought in your arena not because I wanted to entertain your queen, but because I wanted to survive. I looked into the eyes of beasts and warriors who were meant to kill me, and I'm still here, because of you. A ripple went through the crowd. Zithara's smile tightened. You cheered when I stood against her champions, Elias continued. You laughed when the impossible became possible, and every cheer, every laugh, every voice reminded me that you are not as silent as they want you to be. The murmurs grew louder. You are strong, he said. You are proud, and you do not need to be afraid of speaking the truth. The roar of the crowd was instant and deafening. Zithara's hand twitched, but she forced herself to remain still, knowing that to silence him now would make her look afraid. That evening, in the palace's council chamber, the Queen dismissed everyone except Elias. The doors closed with a heavy thud. You are playing a dangerous game, she said, her voice low and sharp. Elias met her gaze. So are you. The difference is, you think you're in control. Her eyes flashed. I could have you executed before the sun's rise. And the moment you do, Elias replied calmly, the streets will be filled with people shouting my name, not yours. The nobles will see you as a ruler who fears her own champion. You'll lose them faster than you can kill me. They stood, in silence for a long moment, the tension like a drawn blade between them. Finally, she stepped closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper. If you think you can take my throne, you will have to do more than win the people. You will have to defeat me. Elias's lips curved into the faintest smile. Then you've already given me my path. Over the next several days, Zithara paraded him through the Empire's grand cities. In every world, she introduced him as her symbol of unity. And in every world, he found ways to turn the crowds toward him, speaking to workers in the shipyards, sharing meals with farmers, even sparring publicly with young soldiers. Everywhere he went, he listened more than he spoke. And he left behind whispers, small, dangerous seeds planted in the minds of the people. By the time they returned to the capital, the Empire's loyalty was no longer a single unbroken chain. It was a net, still connected, but with holes widening every day. Late one night, The old prisoner-turned-servant came to Elias with urgent news. "She's preparing for the trial of sovereigns," he whispered. Elias frowned. "What's that?" "A challenge of rule. It hasn't been invoked in generations. If she declares it, you must face her, not in the arena, but in a battle of both skill and will. The winner is crowned ruler. The loser is dead." Elias felt the weight of the words settle in his chest. "Then she's decided to end this." The old alien shook his head. "Or she thinks it will end her problem. But she underestimates the will of someone who has nothing to lose." Elias looked out the window toward the palace spire where her throne room lay. His voice was quiet, but firm. "Then I'll take what she's dared to put on the table." The announcement struck the Empire like a thunderclap. From the palace steps, Queen Zithra's voice rang out over the gathered masses. "By the ancient laws of the Virilan Empire, I invoke the trial of sovereigns. Elias Cross-Human, you will face me in combat to prove your worth. Victory will grant you the throne. Defeat will end your life." The crowd roared, not in shock, but in anticipation. To see their queen in the arena was rare. To see her face a human challenger was unthinkable. Elias stood to her left, the sunlight casting his shadow long across the marble. He didn't speak, didn't smile. He simply met her golden eyes, and for a heartbeat, the two of them were the only ones there. That night, the palace was a hive of activity. In one wing, Zithera trained with her elite guard. Her strikes were brutal, her footwork precise, each movement honed by decades of battle. She had fought and killed warlords twice her size, broken rebellions with her bare hands. In another wing, Elias moved through his own preparations. He had no elite guard, no arsenal of advanced weapons. What he did have was something more valuable: information. Varek, the Queen's own advisor, stood across from him in the training hall. "She's faster than you, stronger than you, and she knows every traditional form. If you fight her on her terms, you will die." Elias tightened the wrappings on his hands. "Then I won't fight her on her terms." They trained until the palace moons rose high, Elias focusing on evasion, counterstrikes, and exploiting her pride. He didn't need to overpower her. He needed her to overcommit. Word of the trial spread beyond the capital. On distant worlds, workers paused in their labor to talk about the human who had defied the Queen. In the deep space ports, soldiers placed quiet bets on who would win. Nobles whispered in private halls, some secretly hoping Elias would succeed. And in the streets of Virilan Prime, murals began to appear overnight, Elias's face painted beside the words, "Our Champion." 3 nights before the trial, Elias stood, alone in the palace garden, staring out at the glowing city. The old prisoner-turned-servant appeared from the shadows. "She will not fight fair," the old alien said. "The trial is supposed to be combat without interference, but the Queen will bend the rules. Expect hidden weapons, distractions, maybe, even poison." Elias nodded slowly. "Then I'll make her own tricks work against her." The old alien studied him for a moment. "If you win, you will not just inherit her throne, you will inherit her enemies. Are you ready for that?" Elias's gaze stayed on the city lights. "If I win, I'll already be living with them." The day before the trial, the Queen summoned Elias to her private chamber. The air was thick with the scent of burning oils, the room dimly lit by a single golden lamp. She sat in her throne-like chair, one leg crossed over the other, her armor gleaming in the firelight. "I could still end you now," she said softly. "No trial, no spectacle. One word, and you disappear." Elias stepped forward until he was only a few feet from her. "Then do it." Her eyes narrowed. "But you won't," he continued. "Because deep down, you want the people to see you beat me. You want them to watch you crush the one they've been whispering about. You want them to believe no one can touch you." Her golden eyes burned. "And when I do?" Elias's voice was calm, then you'll still be afraid of me. Because fear doesn't vanish when the person is gone. It lingers in everyone who remembers. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Zethira smiled, not with amusement but with the thrill of a predator before the hunt. Tomorrow, human, you will stand in the arena, and tomorrow I will show the galaxy what happens to those who aim for my throne. That night, Elias slept little. The sounds of the city drifted through his window, the distant hum of airships, the occasional cheer from taverns where bets were being placed. Somewhere beyond those lights, he knew, the people were waiting for a sign. The trial of sovereigns would not just decide who wore the crown, it would decide who deserved it. The arena had never been so full. From the highest balcony to the lowest row, every seat was taken. Banners of silver and crimson snapped in the wind, and the scent of burning oils mixed with the heat of the twin suns overhead. The roar of the crowd was a living thing, shaking the very walls. In the center stood the trial circle, smooth white stone marked with ancient carvings. It was here, by law older than the empire itself, that rulers were challenged for the throne. Queen Zethira entered first, her black and gold armor gleaming like molten metal, a long ceremonial blade in her hand. She walked with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. The crowd's cheer was loud, but not as loud as what came next. When Elias stepped into the circle, the sound doubled. The people shouted his name, the chant rolling like thunder. Elias! 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 Zethira's golden eyes flicked toward them, then back to him. Enjoy it, she said quietly, while it lasts. A horn sounded. The trial began. She moved first, fast, a blur of black and gold, her blade slicing toward his ribs. Elias twisted away, the strike missing by inches. He didn't counter, not yet. He made her chase him, just as he had with the arena beast. The crowd began to laugh, not at him, but at the queen's missed strikes. Her jaw tightened. She attacked again, harder this time, her blows ringing against the stone when they missed. Elias ducked, sidestepped, and struck once. Not to wound, but to catch the edge of her blade and twist it aside. You're holding back, he said. Her eyes narrowed. I don't need my full strength to end you. Then maybe that's why. You're losing ground, he replied. The duel stretched on. Sweat glistened on both of them. The queen's style was sharp and precise, but it was also predictable. Elias began to see the rhythm in her movements, the faint shift of her shoulders before she struck, the way she favored her right side when pressing forward. When she lunged again, he stepped inside her guard, his hand snapping up to grab her wrist. He used her momentum to throw her off balance, sending her stumbling back. The crowd roared. Zethira straightened, her jaw set. The playful edge in her gaze was gone now, replaced with cold fury. She drew a hidden dagger from her armor, breaking the trial's rule. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Elias didn't back away. He let her come, her strikes wild with anger. At the last moment he pivoted, catching her arm and twisting it until the dagger clattered to the stone. You brought a hidden blade to the trial of sovereigns? He said loudly enough for the front rows to hear. The murmurs spread like fire, through the stands. In the Virilan code, dishonor in the trial was almost as bad as defeat. She attacked again, desperate now to regain control. But Elias didn't give her the chance. He caught her blade on his own, slid past it, and swept her legs out from under her. She hit the ground hard, the tip of his sword at her throat before she could rise. Silence fell. Every eye in the arena was on them. The queen's chest rose and fell as she glared up at him. Do it, she hissed. If you want the throne, you'll have to kill me. Elias looked at her for a long moment. Then he lowered the blade just enough for the crowd to hear him clearly. No, he said, because I'm not here to rule through fear. He stepped back and tossed the sword to the stone between them. The message was clear. He had beaten her, but he would not strike the final blow. The crowd erupted, not in the queen's name, in his. By the ancient law, Victory in the trial went to the one who forced the other to yield or be unable to fight. Zythera had been disarmed, pinned, and spared. The law was unbreakable. An elder of the court stepped forward, his voice booming. By the will of the trial, Elias Cross is the new ruler of the Virellan Empire. The roar of the crowd shook the stones. Zythera rose slowly, her eyes burning into his. For a heartbeat, Elias thought she might strike anyway. But then she smiled. A small, sharp smile. "You took my throne, human," she said quietly. "But remember, I am still alive." Elias met her gaze. "Good. It means you'll be here to see what I do with it." That night, as the capital celebrated, Elias stood on the same balcony where she had once looked down on her people. Only now the chants of the crowd were not for her. They were for him. And in the shadows far below, Queen Zythera watched silently, already planning the day she might take it back.